Welcome back to the Torque Test channel. Today is just a good old-fashioned case of a full-size half-inch impact versus the guy she tells you not to worry about. 1-inch drive impacts in pistol form. We've owned this central pneumatic for some time now, just a useful snug-up gun to have around for drain plugs and the like. And Harbor Freight has come out with their new 1-inch pistol Earthquake, the highest torque pistol-shaped anything ever from the store, and she's girthy. It says 25% lighter. Maybe that's a yo mama joke because it feels still pretty gravitationally gifted. With the emergence of this big boy, we shipped in the largest, biggest, most risk-punishing pistol impact we could find, this Caterpillar model, to see what it can do and if this upgrade from $220 to a $330 impact is worth it. And of course, just rank them all on our large drive size leaderboard and do some bolt breakaway testing that we often do with these as well, just to paint a full picture. This is our central pneumatic 1-inch pistol impact wrench. Don't remember what we paid, got it on coupon, wouldn't sell for the world, I know what I got, all right? But now they got an all new model, so let's take a look at these things. All these pistol guns we show today can be used with a side handle, but like the benefit of these over a big two-hander battering ram is their size and theoretically weight, though we're gonna break that rule today. And while using this one-handed is just sort of a sweet trick sometimes if you can pull it off. This is 9.2 inches long, not terrible, especially in 1 inch, and just about 15 pounds, which, it being all cast aluminum, no composite, that does get old pretty quick. But she's easy enough to maintain and feed as long as you have the air system for it. These are air-thirsty guns. Let's see what it can do in our initial 5-second working torque test. Our most powerful tested on the channel OEM, as in not gas engine swapped pistol gun to date, has been the 3/4 inch from DeWalt, their DCF 964, and in fact Harbor Freight's other latest gun, their 3/4 inch Earthquake, which made a smidge more than the 3/4 inch Snap-on we tested. So you're going to be seeing those on screen. To see that difference today, this 1-inch central pneumatic on screen in white. $798 foot-pounds, not a whole lot up on the latest 3/4 inch Earthquake, and the DeWalt also hasn't entered into its VTEC mode yet. Some more to come from these. This is the new 1-inch pistol from Harbor Freight. We paid $330 for. While it being composite no doubt shaves some pounds from it, it's certainly not shrinking in size. As she's a girthy girl, this proportionally looks sort of like a half-inch gun, just clicked and dragged a bit larger. Everything gets bigger on this, making it look sort of funny, but also awesome. The direction switch is super big. The handle even scales up, though I don't think human hands typically scale all that much. It's a very wide handle, and I often don't find handles on like M12 tools to feel all that large either. And yeah, larger than the central pneumatic overall we got here too. Just about 10 inches versus 9.2, which makes some sense if you're gonna fit all the torques inside this new guy that it advertises. Up from 1,500 foot-pounds on this guy, this is saying 1,800 tightening and 2,300 foot-pounds bolt breakaway, with no data on the test length they used to get there that they have on their other models. Just sort of trust us, bro. She's packing heat sort of spec. It's also higher RPM, quite a bit, nearly 1,000 up, which is huge when we're talking 3,000 versus 4,000. And lighter, though, don't get me wrong, it still feels the part. It's not exactly lightweight, 13.8-ish pounds, more than the DCF 964 DeWalt with a big battery on it. But that's still lighter than the 15 pounds of the current little 1-inch over here. Not close to 25% lighter like they say in this trim, but it is lighter. This direction and power dial is much improved over the central pneumatics and also a whole heap quieter, which is great, though we find most of the noise on these tools is from the big hammer hitting sockets and bolt heads, so never been a huge draw for us, that sort of thing. Let's see how it does. $801 foot-pounds so far. Coca-Cola Classic not being showed up by New Coke here, but it is early days. We have another entry into the pistol pantheon of punching power today. It's the Caterpillar 222-3054. If there ever was a one-hand wielder for a top-level final boss, this looks the part for that. A viewer by the name of Reed reached out to us and asked if we wanted to test this, and with the new Earthquake 1-inch pistol coming out, it seemed well-timed. He shares a similar opinion to us that when shopping for 3/4 inch and 1-inch guns, ignoring most specs except for weight is usually a decent way to go. I mean, the specs on this one are 1,400 foot-pounds tightening, making it somehow the lowest on the day, so weight just might be the way to go with these frame of tools. You see, a lot of 3/4 inch guns are just 1/2 inch guns with a 3/4 inch anvil, especially in cordless. The same thing happens in air tools. A lot of 1 inch guns are actually just the body and frame size, basically 3/4 inch air guns with a 1 inch anvil. And with a white background for their image, it's hard to tell their size. So he instead basically sorted by weight. And if that's your criteria, that's jackpot here. This roughly $850 retail Caterpillar gun comes in at, keeping in mind the earthquake was 13.8, 23.8. We're talking on the door of 2xing the last guy. And this thing, portions of it, its heft, it just gets that serotonin flowing in my caveman brain. It's likely not sporting the latest air motor, high vein count sort of technology, but it just doesn't care. Let's see what she's got. When it comes to these guns, air supply is going to be a big part of making them chooch. And we've got that covered. A short 25-foot, 3/4 inch air hose and Chicago fittings will do that. But this really sucks down the air. I mean, they all do, but this one is in its own league. Here it is. "940 foot-pounds. Yeah, this is in its own league of air consumption, but also in torque. In fact, that's more than a full-size two-hander 1-inch cordless in the M18's case using a 12 amp hour forged battery. So I'd say we're on the right track with this thing. And we're also on the way to a different dyno. You may have noticed this effect. This is with the vise tightened down with a jack handle, so yeah, these hit pretty hard. Need to graduate to the Big Daddy dyno over here. That can take 3 times as much as one of these can muster and just shrug it off. Here's all the mustard the central pneumatic can muster. $11.61 with the DeWalt now fully hitting its VTEC arc. Things are getting closer now to the 1-inch gun and further from the 3/4 inch air earthquake. Let's see what that earthquake can put up. $1,331. Now we're talking. From what we can tell, or at least we feel, this 1-inch earthquake pistol is more efficient with air, or uses air more effectively. It will run down a compressor slower under full throttle, and when using it impacting to do equal tasks, the compressor just kicks on a little less often. You still need quite an air system to feed either of these, but maybe less brakes needed with this one. And when running a test like this with the pressure allowed to drop to the factory specified 90 psi while in use, it sees some advantage over the rest in a noticeable way. Good stuff. But sometimes the answer isn't efficiency, it's just brute force. It's, I don't care, I'll spend all 120 gallons of air on this bolt, just kill it. The sort of attitude that some unnamed hero out there that's using this one-handed on a daily basis, and that's the type of gentleman I want to buy a beer because this thing rocks. $1,563, that's more than a 1-inch Milwaukee D-handle ever makes with any battery in any test length. And in this test, more than a 1-inch cordless Ingersoll Rand makes, more than a 1-inch Makita, even more than an Ingersoll Rand 1-inch air composite. It hits like a Gatling gun, but oddly jumps around less, wants to bounce off the fastener less than the first two pistols. That weight probably helping here, not sure. I mean, you can tell it's going to town, it just feels unbothered by it all. It's a true workhorse. The beauty of air tools in our best case test, 15-second, the best they can run, is that you can turn them up to your typical shop air 150 psi and just let them eat. While cordless, they just have to try to keep up. Here's the central pneumatic. $1,415, a massive increase over the $11.61 it was making, and the air 3/4 inch even catching up to the DeWalt here due to that same sort of kick in the pants. The central pneumatic really likes all the air pressure it can get a hold of because tools like these move through a lot of air. Any extra you can fit into the tool with that volume along the way, well, it seems to enjoy that. this is how the latest 1-inch earthquake pistol does. So on top of everything so far, but oddly trading blows with the central pneumatic, look, this gun has an odd relationship with air. It uses less than the smaller looking cheaper gun, and it's quieter as well by a lot, just than free speed, but also doesn't divert enough air into that cylinder in the lower power dial setting modes, like enough to even get it going. Not enough flow for it to cycle its large hammer up front, so it has to be used in high. Then when in high, does not need as much air to do better than most, as we saw in our max torque test. And then also when turning that up at the wall for full beans, it again isn't too worried about all that air sort of nonsense, seeing a smaller than usual gain compared to the central pneumatic. But this also isn't the end of this one's story. While we're showing the peak numbers each of these can make, we have bolt breakaway coming up, in which we'll get to see that difference of forward versus reverse bias. That on air tools can make a difference. Let's not forget though about the cat. Here's his final dyno measurement. Let's see it. $1,677. Not surprisingly, king of the heap in this crowd. To get the most out of this gun, you have to try to sort of keep the gun aligned with the bolt head or nut. When it's off kilter, for some reason, it slows down a bit in the motor, but this is the best numbers that we did get from it, which are by no means bad at all, but well, let me show you what I mean. Let's head over to the rank charts. The Caterpillar was on a heater if you compare its performance up to this point with these, but on our longest test where we should see some more pressure advantage, ultimately overall hammer size compared to the slower hitting but larger footprint tools, well, except for the M18, which this did blow past but is still somehow heavier than that as well. This is about as far as a pistol impact like this can take you, and up to the highest torque level stuff, these slower hitting tools still make a difference at the top, continuing to rotate really stuck stuff. So this did taper off a bit. Let's total things. Their dyno runs are turned into points like this. As a function of performance and weight, that's going to look like this, with the cat gun getting really a lot lower points here, and the composite earthquake 1-inch getting very high marks. That gun also advertises quite a bit more torque than the central pneumatic, but we couldn't get all that much more from it. And that's even talking tightening torque specs. It was further apart here at the 90 PSI tests, but then the numbers were even further away. So 94 versus 80% and the 100% max here, just some good old fashioned industrial torque advertising here. Nothing flashy, just over delivering. As a function of performance and price, this is 64.3, 43.6, and just 19.7 points for the pricey Caterpillar. But that doesn't stop this from scoring a full 603.4, then 577.1 and 573.7 here, placing these two pretty well actually, but closer together than expected, and the cat way up here, situated below a very select few, and just an engine swapped 3/4 inch DeWalt abomination on this fun ranking we have here. So is this difference worth the price? Well, one of the limitations of having to use a big dyno is precisely measuring torque in the reverse direction. We can't get as much data in a video like this as we'd like to using repeatable, measurable means, but we can at least just remove some high torque stuff and chart that removal versus each other to give you a more complete picture. So when we're talking removing 1,450 foot-pounds, something we tend to do with these tools, the central pneumatic takes a bit. It's not shabby, noticeably better than 3/4 inch DeWalt on screen, which is powerful, but still around 9 seconds. That's about the time it takes for something equally balanced forward and reverse, like when it's built power level wise at this torque level. The earthquake pistol, also at this torque level, is just more reverse favoring, something you can do building that motor on these where you clock the exhaust ports and where you place them. This does the same task in only 5 to 6 seconds. And of course, the Caterpillar does this like laughably quick. Quicker than any cordless 1-inch to date in reality. Just 3 seconds helped in part by being able to hit faster, so time tests at this level do favor it. In fact, a full 1,750 foot-pounds starting out here, that's when the cat will take the same amount of time as the next closest impact to remove just 1,450 for those other ones. It is straight up just a tank. A reverse bias is definitely not a bad thing to have in many cases, so considering so much of our testing is done in forward with the dyno of this size, that's worth keeping in mind and puts the new 1-inch pistol earthquake into consideration for a lot of folks that need that, especially when its $320 price tag is pretty far off from the typical $550 plus of this category. For strictly cool factor alone though, and that's gonna be delivered by this one, the cat just takes it on the day for me. Even the biggest downsides of this tool are sort of just badass. Can't find a single thing wrong with it. I want one. Thanks to Reed for letting us give her a go, and thank you for watching. Click down below if you want to see more stuff like this. Appreciate you joining us.